My mom said, everyone's getting a little gift. My son got socks. My sister's kids got brand new phones. He looked up at me and whispered, Mom, did I do something wrong? I pulled him into a hug. That night, I quietly smiled and removed every single one of them from my health insurance plan. Can you imagine being betrayed by the very people who should love you most? What if that betrayal cut so deep, it forced you to choose between your own child's worth and the family you thought you knew? It was October, and my mom was in her Milwaukee kitchen, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. Everyone will get something small this year. We're keeping it simple and fair. I'd driven all the way there with my son, Ethan, who was 8 and still believed in the magic of family. My sister, Kelsey, sat across the table, scrolling on her phone with her 12-year-old twins, Sophie and Sam. Sounds reasonable, I said, pouring myself a coffee. Ethan will be happy with anything. Mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She had that look she always got when she was planning something, the one that made me uneasy, but I could never quite pinpoint why. I brushed it off. Christmas was still 2 months away, right? My name is Morgan. I'm 35, a single mom, and a regional manager for a pharmaceutical company. It's demanding, but it pays the bills and then some. Ethan's dad? He's been out of the picture for 6 years, ever since he decided fatherhood wasn't part of his life plan. So, it's just been us, navigating everything together. I've always prided myself on my independence. I don't ask my family for help, not financially anyway. I make my own way. But I still show up for holidays. I still try to maintain those connections, even when they feel more like obligations than genuine relationships. Kelsey finally looked up from her phone. Mom, the kids really want the new phones for Christmas. You know, the ones with the good cameras. My mom's tone was noncommittal. We'll see. A small twinge of annoyance pricked at me. Kelsey's husband, Todd, made good money in sales. They weren't struggling, but my sister had always been good at asking for things, good at making people feel like they owed her something. What about you, Ethan? My mom asked, bending down to look at my son. What do you want for Christmas? Ethan just shrugged, his small shoulders barely moving. I don't know, maybe some art supplies or books. Mom patted his head absently. We'll figure something out. I watched the interaction carefully, how quickly her attention shifted back to Kelsey's twins. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed the difference in how she treated the kids, but I'd always told myself I was being oversensitive. That evening, driving home, Ethan was quiet in the back seat. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. You okay, buddy? Yeah, he said, but his voice was tiny. Mom, does Grandma like Sophie and Sam more than me? My hands clenched on the steering wheel. Sophie and Sam were Kelsey's twins, and they were spoiled in ways that made my teeth ache. My mom had always doted on them, made excuses for their behavior, found reasons to give them more. Of course not, I lied, my voice gentle. Grandma loves you very much. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. My mom had always favored Kelsey. Growing up, my sister got the bigger room, the nicer clothes, the more expensive gifts. I was the responsible one, the one who didn't need as much attention, the one who could figure things out on her own. And somehow, that pattern had extended to our children. I had spent years telling myself it didn't matter. Ethan and I had built a good life. We didn't need anyone else's validation. But seeing his small, uncertain face in that mirror, something inside me cracked just a little. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my mom about health insurance. She and my dad had been on my family plan for 3 years, ever since my dad's company changed their benefits and premiums skyrocketed. I'd added them without hesitation because that's what family does. Just checking that everything's still good for next year, she said. Of course, you and Dad are covered. Kelsey too, right? I had added my sister 18 months ago when she went through a rough patch with Todd's job. Yes, thank you, honey. You're so good to us. I should have felt warm hearing those words. Instead, they felt hollow, like she was reading from a script. But I pushed the feeling aside, focused on work, on Ethan's school events, on the ordinary rhythm of our lives. November came and went. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house was the usual chaos. Dad carved the turkey while Mom fussed over Kelsey's twins, making sure they had extra helpings of everything they liked. Ethan sat quietly, eating his food, not complaining, not asking for anything special. Morgan, you look tired, Kelsey said, her voice dripping with false concern. Are you sleeping enough? I'm fine, I replied, keeping my voice even. You should take better care of yourself. It's hard being alone, I'm sure. There it was. The subtle dig. The reminder that I was single, that I didn't have a partner, that somehow my life was less than hers because of it. I didn't respond. I'd learned years ago that engaging with Kelsey only made things worse. But I filed it away. Another small piece of evidence that something in this family dynamic had been broken for a very long time. As December approached, my mom called more frequently, always with small requests, always with that same empty gratitude that made my stomach turn. The first week of December brought an unexpected cold snap to Milwaukee. I was buried in work, inventory, shipments, staffing issues at 3 different distribution centers. Ethan had started asking about Christmas, his excitement building despite my warnings that gifts would be modest this year. Remember what Grandma said? I reminded him one evening as we decorated our small tree. Everyone's getting something small, nothing big or fancy. I know, Mom, he said, carefully hanging an ornament he'd made in 2nd grade. I don't need anything big anyway. I just want everyone to be together. His words made my chest tight. At 8 years old, he was already more emotionally mature than half the adults in our family. He'd had to be. Growing up without a father, with a mom who worked long hours, he learned early that life required patience and understanding. We had our own traditions, just the 2 of us. Hot chocolate on Sunday mornings, reading together before bed, weekend trips to the art museum where he'd spend hours studying the paintings, asking questions about technique and color. He was a thoughtful kid, creative and kind, and I'd done everything in my power to make sure he never felt the absence of his father as a deficiency in his life. But family gatherings were different. At my parents' house, I could see him watching the way my mom interacted with Sophie and Sam, how she laughed at their jokes and indulged their demands, how she barely noticed when Ethan tried to show her something he'd drawn or tell her about something he'd learned at school. Mid-December, I drove to my mom's house to drop off some documents she needed to sign for the insurance renewal. Kelsey was already there. Her twins were in the living room, playing video games on the massive television my parents had. Bought them the previous Christmas. Morgan, my mom said, taking the papers. Perfect timing. I was just showing Kelsey the gifts I got for the kids. I followed her into her bedroom where several wrapped packages sat on the bed, 2 large boxes with expensive-looking wrapping paper and 1 small, flat package with drugstore wrap. Those 2 are for Sophie and Sam, she said, pointing to the large boxes. And that one is for Ethan. Something cold settled in my stomach. Mom, you said everyone was getting something small. These are small, she protested. Well, practical anyway. The twins need new phones. Their old ones are ancient. They're barely a year old, I said, my voice tight. Teenagers need good phones for school, Kelsey chimed in from the doorway. You wouldn't understand since Ethan's still young. I looked at the small package meant for my son. What did you get Ethan? Socks, my mom said brightly. Good quality ones. He's growing so fast. I thought practical made sense. Socks. They're nice socks, she insisted. From that outdoor store. They were expensive. I stared at her, waiting for her to recognize the absurdity of what she was saying. Phones for the twins. Socks for Ethan. Everyone getting something small. Morgan, don't make that face, Kelsey said. Mom's on a fixed income. She can't buy expensive things for everyone. Those phones cost at least $600 each, I said flatly. Well, we pitched in some money, too, Kelsey admitted. The kids really needed them. The room felt like it was tilting. I had spent years making excuses for my family, years convincing myself that the unequal treatment wasn't as bad as it seemed, that I was being too sensitive. But this was blatant. This was cruel. Ethan won't mind, my mom said, completely missing or ignoring my distress. He's such an easy child, not demanding like some kids. He's easy because I've raised him to be grateful for what he has, I said, my voice shaking. Not because he deserves less. Nobody said he deserves less, Kelsey snapped. You're being dramatic. It's just Christmas presents. I left without another word, driving home in a fog of anger and hurt. When I got home, Ethan was at his desk, working on a drawing. He looked up when I came in, his face brightening. Mom, look what I made. It's for Grandma for Christmas. He held up a carefully drawn portrait of our family, all of us together, smiling. The detail was remarkable for an 8-year-old. He'd spent hours on it, I could tell. It's beautiful, honey. Do you think she'll like it? I looked at my son's hopeful face, at the artwork he'd poured his heart into, and something inside me shifted. I had protected him from so much, worked so hard to give him a stable, loving home. But I had failed to protect him from this. From the casual cruelty of people who should have loved him unconditionally. She'll love it, I said, because what else could I say? That night, I lay awake, thinking about those wrapped packages. About the difference between $600 phones and a package of socks. I thought about every time my mom had casually dismissed Ethan's accomplishments while celebrating Sophie and Sam's mediocre efforts. Every time Kelsey had made snide comments about my life while ignoring the fact that I was the one keeping our parents on my health insurance, the one who showed up when anyone needed help. I had always been the reliable one, the one who didn't complain, the one who made things work. And this was how they valued that reliability. By the time morning came, I hadn't slept at all, but I knew exactly what I was going to do. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow covering the Milwaukee streets. Ethan woke up early, excited, despite my repeated warnings that gifts would be modest. We opened our presents to each other first, just the two of us in our living room. I'd gotten him art supplies, books he'd been wanting, and a new winter coat he actually needed. He'd used his allowance to buy me a coffee mug with "World's Best Mom" painted on it in wobbly letters. I held it and fought back tears. "Do you like it?" he asked anxiously. "I love it," I said, pulling him into a hug. "It's perfect." We were supposed to be at my parents' house by noon. I dressed carefully, putting on my best sweater, making sure Ethan looked neat and presentable. He carried the portrait he'd made for my mom, wrapped carefully in paper he'd decorated himself. The drive over was quiet. Ethan hummed Christmas songs under his breath, and I gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I had spent the past week preparing myself for this moment, running through scenarios in my head, trying to predict how everything would unfold. My parents' house was already full when we arrived. Kelsey's family had gotten there early, and Sophie and Sam were showing off new outfits they'd received that morning. My dad was in his chair, reading the paper, barely looking up when we came in. "Merry Christmas," my mom called out, rushing over to hug Kelsey's twins. She patted Ethan on the head absently. "Go put your coats in the back room." I watched as Ethan carefully placed the wrapped portrait under the tree with the other gifts. It had a tag that read, "To Grandma, Love, Ethan," in his careful handwriting. Lunch was the usual chaos. My mom had made a ham, and Kelsey had brought side dishes that she made sure everyone knew were from an expensive gourmet store. The twins monopolized the conversation, talking about their plans for the new year, their sports teams, their school drama. Ethan ate quietly, occasionally trying to add something to the conversation, but getting talked over by Sophie or Sam every time. I saw him eventually give up, just focusing on his food. After lunch, it was time for presents. My mom played Santa, handing out gifts with great ceremony. She started with the twins. "These are very special," she announced, handing them the large boxes I'd seen in her bedroom. "I know you two have been wanting these." Sophie and Sam tore into the wrapping paper, squealing when they saw the phone boxes. They immediately started opening them, ignoring everyone else in the room as they powered up their new devices. "Mom, this is too much," Kelsey said, but her voice was pleased, satisfied. "Only the best for my grandchildren," my mom replied. Then she picked up the small, flat package. "And this is for Ethan." My son took it carefully, his face expectant. He opened it slowly, not tearing the paper like the twins had done. When he saw what was inside, his expression didn't change. But I saw something die behind his eyes. Socks. A 3-pack of wool socks from an outdoor store. "Do you like them?" my mom asked. "They're very good quality. They'll keep your feet warm." Ethan looked at the socks, then at his cousins with their phones, then back at the socks. "Thank you, Grandma," he said quietly. "That's it?" Kelsey laughed. "Not even an excited thank you. Kids these days don't appreciate practical gifts." He said, "Thank you," I said, my voice sharp. "Well, he could sound more grateful," my mom added. "Those socks weren't cheap." I watched my son clutch the package of socks, his small hands tight on the cardboard packaging. He wasn't crying. He wasn't complaining. He was just sitting there, trying to understand why his cousins got phones and he got socks, when Grandma had promised everyone would get something small. "Mom," Ethan whispered, leaning close to me. "Did I do something wrong?" Those words broke something in me that I didn't even know could break. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tight against my side. "No, baby," I whispered back. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing." Kelsey was helping her twins set up their phones. My mom was cooing over how excited they were. And my dad was still reading his paper like nothing significant was happening. Nobody noticed that Ethan had gone completely silent. Nobody cared. We stayed for another hour because leaving immediately would have caused a scene, and I was still trying to process my rage into something manageable. Ethan never mentioned the present disparity again. He thanked my mom 3 more times for the socks, each time sounding a little smaller, a little more defeated. When it was time to open the gift he'd made, My mom barely glanced at the portrait. "Oh, how nice," she said, setting it aside to make room for the wrapping paper she was collecting. "You're getting so good at drawing, honey." She put it on the side table and immediately turned her attention back to Sophie and Sam, who were taking selfies with their new phones. Ethan saw where she'd put his portrait, sandwiched between some magazines and a stack of mail. His face remained neutral, but I knew him well enough to read the hurt there. The drive home was silent. When we got inside, Ethan went straight to his room. I followed him after a moment and found him sitting on his bed, still holding the package of socks. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked again, and this time, his voice cracked. I sat down next to him and pulled him close. "No, sweetheart. You did everything right. This isn't about you." "Then why did Sophie and Sam get phones and I got socks?" I had no answer that would make this better. No explanation that would ease the hurt. So I just held him while he cried quietly into my shoulder, mourning something he was too young to fully understand, but old enough to feel deeply. That night, after Ethan was finally asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop. I pulled up my health insurance portal and looked at the family plan that covered my parents, my sister, and her husband. Then I smiled and started typing. The day after Christmas, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Ethan was still sleeping, exhausted from the emotional toll of the previous day. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, reviewing the health insurance portal. My family plan covered 6 people: me, Ethan, my parents, Kelsey, and her husband Todd. The cost was substantial, over $800 a month deducted from my paycheck. I had never complained about it. When my dad's company changed their benefits 3 years ago, and their premiums tripled, I had added them without hesitation. When Kelsey hit a rough patch with Todd's job 18 months ago, I had added them too. Because that's what family does. That's what I had been taught. You help each other. You support each other. You show up when it matters. Except it only seemed to work one way. I pulled up my phone and scrolled through the photos from yesterday. There was one Kelsey had posted on social media, Sophie and Sam holding their new phones, huge smiles on their faces, with the caption, "Spoiled by the best grandma ever." These kids are so blessed. Blessed. The word made my stomach turn. I looked at the date on my insurance portal. The next billing cycle started January 1st, 5 days away. Changes to the family plan could be made up until December 31st at midnight. Perfect timing. But I didn't do anything yet. I needed to think this through. Needed to be absolutely certain. This wasn't a decision to make in anger. It was a decision that would have consequences, and I needed to be ready for them. I spent the day with Ethan, taking him to the movies and then out for pizza. He seemed better, more like himself, though I caught him being unusually quiet during the film. At dinner, he pushed his pizza around his plate. "Mom, why doesn't Grandma like me as much as Sophie and Sam?" I had been dreading this question. "It's complicated, honey. Is it because I don't have a dad?" The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" No, that has nothing to do with anything. Sophie said her mom said that Grandma feels sorry for you because you're alone. That I'm probably harder to deal with because I don't have a dad to help discipline me. My hands clenched into fists under the table. Kelsey had said that. My sister had said that about my son, about me. And my mother had apparently agreed, or at least hadn't corrected her. Sophie shouldn't have said that, I managed, keeping my voice level. And it's not true. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You're kind and smart and creative. Any difference in how you're treated has nothing to do with you and everything to do with other people's problems. He looked at me with those big, serious eyes. "Are we going to keep going to Grandma's house?" It was a fair question. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "But whatever happens, you and I are going to be just fine. We always are." That night, after Ethan was asleep, I called my best friend, Jessica. We had been friends since college, and she knew my family situation better than anyone. "They did what?" She exploded when I told her about Christmas. "Are you kidding me? Phones and socks." I know, it sounds petty when I say it out loud. It's not petty, Morgan. That's cruel. That's deliberately cruel to a child. Ethan asked me today if Grandma doesn't like him because he doesn't have a dad. Jessica was silent for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I'm thinking about removing them from my insurance plan." "Your parents and Kelsey." "All of them." "My parents, Kelsey, and Todd. They'll lose their coverage. They'll have to find new insurance." "It's not impossible." "Expensive maybe, but not impossible." Jessica was quiet again. "You're serious about this?" "I pay over $800 a month to insure people who think my son deserves socks while their grandchildren get phones. People who let my sister say cruel things about us. People who have never once said thank you in a way that meant anything. Then do it, Jessica said firmly. They've been taking advantage of you for years. Your mom especially. You've been the reliable one. The one who doesn't need anything. The one who just handles everything. And this is how they treat you. I keep thinking I should try to talk to them first and say what? They know what they did. Your mom knew exactly what message she was sending when she bought those gifts. She just didn't think you'd do anything about it. She was right. My mom had counted on me swallowing my anger, accepting the situation, being the bigger person because that's what I always did. Do it, Jessica said again. And don't feel guilty about it. December 29th arrived. I had spent 2 days going back and forth, questioning myself, wondering if I was overreacting. But every time I wavered, I thought about Ethan's face when he opened those socks. I thought about him asking if he'd done something wrong. I logged into the insurance portal at 9 p.m. My hands were steady as I navigated to the family plan section. One by one, I removed them, my father, my mother, Kelsey, Todd. For names deleted with 4 clicks. The system asked me to confirm. I confirmed. It asked if I was sure. I was sure. The changes would take effect January 1st. They'd receive notification letters in the mail within a week, informing them their coverage had ended. Until then, I had roughly 48 hours of peace before the chaos began. I closed my laptop and felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, but something close. A sense that I had finally stood up for my son and for myself. December 30th passed quietly. Ethan and I stayed home, organizing his new art supplies, reading together, being present with each other. My phone rang 3 times. My mom, Kelsey, my mom again. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready yet. December 31st arrived, and I knew the notification letters had been sent. They'd probably arrive by January 2nd or 3rd, depending on the mail. I had that long before everything exploded. Ethan and I spent New Year's Eve watching movies and eating popcorn. At midnight, we banged pots and pans together like we did every year, making noise to welcome the new year. He was laughing, happy, and for the first time in days, he seemed like himself again. January 1st came with fresh snow and quiet streets. I made breakfast and tried not to think about what was coming. My phone rang 4 times that day. I still didn't answer. January 2nd, the calls became more frequent. 6 times from my mom, 3 from Kelsey, 2 from my dad, which was unusual because he never called me directly for anything. I let them all go to voicemail. That evening, I finally listened to the messages. My mom's first message, Morgan, honey, call me back when you get this. I need to ask you something about the insurance. Her second message, Morgan, I got a letter today saying our coverage is ending. There must be some mistake. Can you call the insurance company and sort this out? Her third message, Morgan, this isn't funny. Call me back right now. Kelsey's messages were progressively angrier. Mom got a weird letter about insurance. Do you know anything about this? Then, Morgan, pick up your phone. Then, are you seriously ignoring us? What is wrong with you? My dad's message was tired. Morgan, your mother is very upset. Please call us back. I didn't call back. Not yet. January 3rd arrived with my phone ringing at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was already awake. Had been for an hour anticipating this moment. It was my mom calling. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello, Morgan. My mom's voice was shrill with panic. Finally. I've been trying to reach you for days. Did you get my messages? I did. Then why didn't you call back? We got letters saying our health insurance is being canceled. There has to be a mistake. You need to call them and fix it. I poured myself coffee, letting the silence stretch. It's not a mistake, Mom. What? What are you talking about? I removed you, Dad, Kelsey, and Todd from my family plan. The coverage ended January 1st. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then you did what? I removed you from my insurance. You'll need to find your own coverage now. Morgan, you can't do that. We need that insurance. Your father has doctor appointments scheduled. I have prescriptions that need refilling. You can't just cancel our insurance. I can, actually. It's my plan. I've been paying for it for 3 years. But we're family. You can't just abandon us like this. The word abandon hit something raw in me. Like you abandoned my son on Christmas when you gave his cousin $600 phones and gave him socks? Oh, for heaven's sake. Is this what this is about? You're upset about Christmas presents. I'm upset that you promised everyone would get something small and then gave Sophie and Sam expensive gifts while my son got socks. I'm upset that you didn't see anything wrong with that. I'm upset that when Ethan asked if he'd done something wrong, I had no good answer for him. He's being dramatic. They're just presents. He's 8 years old, Mom. And he's not being dramatic. He asked me if you don't like him because he doesn't have a father. Do you know why he asked that? Because Sophie told him that Kelsey said you feel sorry for me for being alone and that I'm probably harder to raise because I don't have a husband to help discipline me. My mom was quiet for a moment. Kelsey shouldn't have said that. But she did. And apparently you agreed. Or at least you didn't correct her. So Ethan, who is 8 years old, thinks his grandmother doesn't love him as much because his father left. Morgan, you're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, my son received the message loud and clear that he's worth less than his cousins, and I'm done pretending that's acceptable. So, you're going to punish us by taking away our health insurance? That's incredibly vindictive. I laughed. But it wasn't a pleasant sound. Vindictive? I've been paying for your insurance for 3 years. I added Kelsey and Todd when they needed help. I've never asked for anything in return. But the moment I stopped giving you something, I'm vindictive. We needed that insurance. Then you should have treated my son with basic respect. You should have kept your promise about small gifts. You should have thought about how your actions would affect a child. Morgan, please. You're being unreasonable. Can we just talk about this? We're talking about it. The answer is no. Find your own insurance. We can't afford the premiums on our own. You know that. Then maybe you shouldn't have spent $1,200 on phones for the twins. That's different. How? Explain to me how that's different. She couldn't. Or wouldn't. The silence stretched again. Finally, she said, your father and I raised you better than this. We taught you about family loyalty. You taught me that family means being there for people, even when they don't deserve it. But you forgot to teach me that it should go both ways. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or regret. From release. From finally saying things that had needed to be said for years. The phone rang again immediately. Kelsey this time. I answered. What the hell is wrong with you? She screamed before I could even say hello. Mom just called me crying. You canceled our insurance. I removed you from my family plan. Yes. How could you do that? Todd and I need that coverage. We have 2 kids. You also have 2 incomes. You can afford your own insurance. It's going to cost us a fortune. We can't afford premiums right now. But you could afford to chip in for $1,200 worth of phones. That's completely different. Everyone keeps saying that, but nobody can explain how. Those were Christmas presents for our children. You're going to punish Sophie and Sam because you're jealous? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply choosing not to pay $800 a month to subsidize. People who think my son deserves socks while their kids get phones. God, you're such a martyr. You always have to make everything about you. This isn't about me, Kelsey. It's about Ethan. It's about the fact that on Christmas morning, when he opened his present and saw what he got compared to his cousins, something broke in him. And none of you noticed or cared. He's fine. Kids need to learn that life isn't fair. Oh, he's learning that, don't worry. He's learning that his grandmother and his aunt think he's worth less than his cousins. He's learning that family means different things to different people. He's learning that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will hurt you in ways that can't be fixed. You're being ridiculous. They're just presents. If they're just presents, then this is just insurance. Find your own. Mom said you're jealous because I have a husband and you don't. That you've always resented me for having a complete family. There it was. The real truth laid bare. This was what they said about me when I wasn't around. This was how they justified the different treatment. You know what, Kelsey? You're right. I am jealous. I'm jealous that your kids have a grandmother who loves them. I'm jealous that you've never had to question whether you matter to our parents. I'm jealous that you get to take family support for granted while I've spent years earning crumbs of affection. That's not true. It is true. And I'm done. I'm done begging for equal treatment. I'm done pretending that socks and phones are the same thing. I'm done paying $800 a month to people who think my son is less important than yours. You can't do this. I already did. Find your own insurance, Kelsey. Consider it a lesson in independence. I hung up on her too. The phone rang 6 more times that day. I didn't answer any of the calls. I had said everything I needed to say. The next 2 weeks were predictable in their chaos. My mom called daily, alternating between guilt trips and anger. Kelsey sent text messages ranging from pleading to threatening. My dad called once more, trying to be the voice of reason, asking me to reconsider. I didn't reconsider. What I hadn't anticipated was how the rest of my family would react. My aunt, my mom's sister, called me to say I was being cruel. My uncle sent me an email about the importance of family forgiveness. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my decision. The narrative my mom had constructed was simple. I was being vindictive over Christmas presents. I was punishing sick, elderly parents over a petty disagreement. I was putting my pride above family needs. What they didn't know, because my mom conveniently left it out, was that I had been paying for their insurance for 3 years, that I had supported Kelsey through her rough patch, that the petty disagreement was about a child being made to feel worthless. Jessica told me to ignore them all. They don't know the full story, and they don't want to know it. Your mom is making herself the victim because that's easier than admitting she was wrong. She was right. But it still hurt. I had expected anger from my immediate family. I hadn't expected the extended family to pile on without asking for my side of the story. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into a major project at the pharmaceutical company, reorganizing our distribution network across 3 states. It was complex, demanding work that required my full attention. My boss, a woman named Patricia, who had always been fair with me, noticed something was off. "Everything okay?" she asked one day in late January. "Family stuff," I said vaguely. She nodded, understanding that sometimes that's all that needs to be said. "Well, if you need anything, let me know. You're doing excellent work on this project, by the way." The validation felt good. At least someone appreciated what I contributed. At home, Ethan had started coming out of his shell again. He was drawing more, talking more, seeming lighter somehow. One evening, he brought me a new picture he'd made. "It's us," he said, showing me a drawing of just the 2 of us standing in front of our house. Our family. I looked at the picture, at how carefully he'd drawn each detail, and how happy we both looked in his rendering. "It's perfect," I said. "Are we still going to see Grandma?" he asked. "I don't know. Do you want to?" He thought about it seriously. "I don't think so. Not right now. She made me feel bad. Then we won't go. Not until you're ready, if ever." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his room. It occurred to me that I had been so worried about protecting him from pain that I hadn't considered he might be relieved to step away from a situation that made him unhappy. Mid-February brought an unexpected development. I received a certified letter from my parents' attorney. The letter informed me that I was being sued for financial abandonment and elder neglect. They were claiming that by removing them from my insurance, I had violated my duty of care as their daughter and put their health at risk. I stared at the letter in disbelief. They were suing me. My own parents were taking me to court because I stopped paying for their insurance. I immediately called a lawyer, someone Patricia recommended. His name was Gregory, and he specialized in family law. I met with him the next day. "Have you seen this kind of case before?" I asked, sliding the letter across his desk. Gregory read it carefully, his expression neutral. "I've seen similar attempts. They rarely succeed. Adult children aren't legally obligated to provide health insurance for their parents unless there's a specific care agreement in place. Do you have any written agreement with them?" "No, I just added them to my plan when they needed help." "Out of kindness?" "Yes. And they're claiming elder neglect because you stopped." "Apparently." Gregory leaned back in his chair. "Here's what's going to happen. We'll respond to this letter. We'll point out that you have no legal obligation to provide insurance, that you did so voluntarily for 3 years, and that they have other options available to them. The case will likely be dismissed before it even gets to court." "How much is this going to cost me?" "My retainer is $2,000. It probably won't go beyond that unless they really push it, which I doubt they will once they realize they have no legal standing. $2,000. Money I'd have to spend because my parents decided to sue me rather than simply find their own insurance." "Do it," I said. "Draft the response." When I got home that evening, there was a car in my driveway I didn't recognize. As I parked, I saw Kelsey sitting on my front porch steps. "We need to talk," she said as I got out of my car. "I don't think we do." "Please, Morgan. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her inside. Ethan was at an after-school art program and wouldn't be home for another hour. We stood in my kitchen, neither of us sitting. "Mom and Dad are suing you," Kelsey said. "I know. I got the letter." "That's insane." "I told them not to do it." "Did you?" "Yes. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand. I came here to ask you to reconsider." "Reconsider what exactly?" "Putting us back on your insurance before the lawsuit goes any further." "So, you want me to pay $800 a month and pretend nothing happened? I want us to be a family again." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "We were never a family, Kelsey. A family doesn't treat one child better than another. A family doesn't sue each other over insurance. A family doesn't say cruel things and expect it to be forgotten because it's inconvenient to deal with consequences. I'm sorry about what I said about you being alone, about Ethan being harder to raise. I shouldn't have said that. But you did say it. And you meant it. And Mom agreed with you. She didn't agree. She didn't disagree either. And that's the problem. None of you have ever stood up for Ethan or for me. You've taken what I've given and acted like it was owed to you. Well, it's not, and I'm done. Kelsey's eyes filled with tears. Please. Todd and I are drowning in premium costs. We can't afford this. You could have afforded it if you hadn't spent $1,200 on phones. That was different. Stop saying that. It wasn't different. You had a choice where to spend your money and you chose phones over insurance. That's fine. Those are your kids and your priorities, but don't ask me to subsidize that choice. She left angry, and I felt nothing but tired. March arrived with warmer weather and a court date. Gregory had been right. The lawsuit was weak, but my parents were pushing forward anyway, likely hoping I'd cave before it got to an actual hearing. They underestimated how done I was with their manipulation. The day before the hearing, I received an unexpected call from my dad, not my mom, which was surprising. Morgan, can we talk? Just you and me. I hesitated. What's there to talk about? Please. Coffee somewhere. Just 30 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe near my office. Neutral territory. My dad looked older than I remembered. More tired. He ordered coffee and sat across from me, his hands wrapped around the cup. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he started. That seems to be a theme in this family. People doing things behind other people's backs. He winced. I deserve that. Morgan, I want you to know that I didn't agree with how Christmas went. I thought the gift disparity was wrong. Then why didn't you say anything? Because I've spent 40 years not saying anything when your mother favors Kelsey. Because it was easier to keep the peace than to fight about it. And where did that get any of us? He sighed. You're right. I should have spoken up. I should have done it years ago. But I'm here now asking you to drop this before it goes to court. I'm not the one who filed a lawsuit, Dad. I know, but you could resolve it by putting us back on your insurance. Why would I do that? Because we're family. I set my coffee down carefully. You keep using that word like it means something. But family is supposed to protect each other. Family is supposed to treat everyone equally. Family is supposed to care when a child is hurt. We do care about Ethan. You have a funny way of showing it. When was the last time you called to ask how he's doing? When was the last time you came to one of his school events? When was the last time you treated him like he mattered as much as Sophie and Sam? My dad couldn't answer. We both knew the truth. I'm not putting you back on my insurance, I said quietly. I'm not paying for people who think my son is disposable, and I'm not backing down from this lawsuit. If you want to take me to court, fine. But you're going to lose, and you're going to pay your attorney fees, and at the end of it, you're still going to need to find your own insurance. Your mother will never forgive you for this. I've accepted that, Dad. Morgan, no, I'm done. I spent my whole life trying to earn equal treatment from this family. I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, took care of myself, helped whenever anyone asked, and it was never enough. Ethan deserved better than what you gave him on Christmas. He deserved better than being compared to his cousins and found lacking. And I deserved better than being expected to bankroll people who treat us like we don't matter. I stood up. I'll see you in court tomorrow, Dad. He didn't try to stop me as I walked out. That evening, I sat with Ethan while he did homework. He was working on a writing assignment about someone he admired. I glanced at his paper and saw he'd written about me. My mom works really hard, his careful handwriting read. She always makes sure I have what I need. She's brave and strong, and she loves me no matter what. She teaches me that it's okay to stand up for yourself. I felt tears prick my eyes. Ethan, this is beautiful. Is it good enough? He asked, worried. It's perfect. You're perfect. He smiled. That pure, uncomplicated smile that reminded me exactly why I was doing all of this. Not for revenge. Not for payback. But to show him that his worth wasn't negotiable, that he deserved to be defended, that standing up for yourself wasn't selfish. It was necessary. The next morning, I dressed carefully for court. Gregory met me outside the courtroom, looking confident. They're going to try to paint you as uncaring and vindictive, he warned. Just stick to the facts. You have no legal obligation to provide insurance. You did so voluntarily. You stopped. End of story. What about the Christmas present thing? We'll mention it if needed. But honestly, the judge isn't going to care about family drama. This is about legal obligation, which they don't have a case for. Inside the courtroom, I saw my parents sitting with their attorney, a man in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to be there. Kelsey was in the gallery, along with a few other family members I recognized. They all stared at me like I was a stranger. The hearing began. My parents' attorney presented their case, that I had abandoned elderly parents who relied on my insurance, that I had acted maliciously and without warning, that my actions had caused them severe emotional and financial distress. It was surreal listening to myself described as some kind of villain. The attorney made it sound like I'd ripped insurance away from helpless, frail people rather than stopped paying for able-bodied adults who could afford their own coverage. Then it was Gregory's turn. Gregory stood and addressed the judge with calm professionalism. Your Honor, this case can be summarized very simply. The plaintiff is alleging that the defendant has a legal obligation to provide health insurance coverage. She does not. He laid out the facts methodically. I was 35 years old, employed, with no legal agreement to provide care for my parents. I had voluntarily added them to my family insurance plan 3 years prior when they requested help. I had paid premiums totaling over $28,000 during that time. I had added my sister and brother-in-law as well, supporting 6 people on my plan. At no point did the defendant sign any document agreeing to provide this coverage indefinitely, Gregory continued. At no point did the plaintiffs enter into a legal care arrangement. The defendant acted out of kindness, not obligation. And when she chose to discontinue that kindness, she was well within her rights to do so. The judge looked at my parents' attorney. Does your client have any documentation showing a legal obligation? The attorney shuffled papers. No, Your Honor, but there's an implied obligation of care between parent and child. In reverse, the judge interrupted. You're arguing that adult children have an implied obligation to provide insurance for their parents? When the parents are elderly and in need, yes. The plaintiffs are both in their early 60s, Gregory interjected. They're employed part-time. They have access to marketplace insurance and Medicare options. They are not indigent or incapable of securing their own coverage. The judge looked at me. Ms. Morgan, is there anything you'd like to add? I stood, my voice steady. Your Honor, I loved my parents. I helped them because I wanted to. But over time, I realized that my help was taken for granted. That my contributions were expected but not appreciated. That my son was being treated differently than his cousins by my family. When I made the decision to remove them from my insurance, it wasn't out of malice. It was out of self-preservation and a need to protect my child from ongoing hurt. This is about Christmas presents, the judge asked, looking at the case file. It's about more than that, Your Honor. But the Christmas incident made it clear that my family didn't value my son the way they valued my sister's children, and I had to make a choice about whether to continue subsidizing people who treated my child as less important. The judge looked at my parents. Do you have anything to say? My mother stood, her voice shaking with emotion. She's my daughter. She's supposed to take care of us. We raised her, gave her everything, and this is how she repays us, by abandoning us when we need her most. You gave me everything? I said, unable to stay quiet. You gave Kelsey everything. You gave me leftovers and criticism and the constant message that I wasn't as good as my sister. I spent my life trying to earn your approval and I never did. So, yes, I stopped paying for your insurance because I finally realized that I don't owe you anything just because you're my parents. Parents are supposed to earn their children's loyalty and love. You didn't earn mine. That's enough, the judge said. But not unkindly. He looked tired, like he'd seen too many families destroy themselves in his courtroom. Here's my ruling. The plaintiff has no legal standing. Adult children are not obligated to provide health insurance for their parents. The defendant acted within her rights to remove the plaintiffs from her insurance plan. Case dismissed. He banged his gavel and it was over. My parents' attorney looked frustrated. My mother was crying. My father, stone-faced. Kelsey stood up and walked out without looking at me. Outside the courtroom, Gregory shook my hand. You did well in there, standing up for yourself, keeping your composure. That judge sees a lot of family cases, and yours was pretty straightforward. Thank you for your help. You're welcome. And for what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Sometimes families need hard boundaries. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. I had won, not just the court case, but something bigger. I had proven to myself that I could stand up to my family's manipulation and survive it. When I picked up Ethan from school, he climbed into the car with a big smile. How was your day, Mom? It was good, buddy. Really good. Can we get ice cream? Absolutely. We went to his favorite ice cream shop, and I watched him enjoy a chocolate cone with sprinkles, completely unaware of the battle I'd been fighting on his behalf. And that was fine. He didn't need to know all the details. He just needed to know that someone was in his corner, always. That evening, my phone rang. It was Jessica. How'd it go? We won. Case dismissed. Yes, I knew you would. How do you feel? Honestly? Free. For the first time in years, I feel free. You should. You stood up for yourself and for Ethan. That takes courage. It shouldn't have taken me this long. Better late than never. So, what's next? I looked around my small house at the drawings Ethan had hung on the walls, at the photos of just the two of us. Next, we just live our lives without the weight of people who don't appreciate us. Sounds perfect. The months that followed were quieter than I expected. I had braced for more fights, more attempts at manipulation, but they never came. My parents and Kelsey found their own insurance, expensive but manageable. The lawsuit had cost them money and dignity, and I think they finally understood that I wasn't going to be guilted into reversing my decision. My aunt called once more in April, this time with a different tone. Your mother told me the whole story, she said. About the Christmas presents, about what you'd been paying for their insurance. I'm sorry I judged you without knowing the facts. Thank you for saying that. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Your mom has always favored Kelsey, and it wasn't fair to you growing up. I should have said something back then. It was validating to hear, even though it didn't change the past. But at least one person in my extended family understood. Work continued to go well. Patricia promoted me to senior regional manager in May with a significant raise. You've been doing exceptional work, she said when she offered me the position. You're organized, reliable, and you handle pressure well. The company needs more people like you in leadership. The extra money meant I could put more away for Ethan's college fund, take him on a real vacation. That summer, we went to Colorado, spent a week hiking and exploring mountain towns. Ethan took hundreds of photos, filled a sketchbook with drawings of landscapes and wildlife. This is the best trip ever, he said one evening as we watched the sunset from our cabin porch. Better than Christmas? I teased gently. He thought about it. Way better. Because here it's just us and we're happy. Out of the mouths of children. In late June, I got an unexpected message from my dad. Not a call, just a text. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and Ethan. I should have done more to protect you both. I'm sorry. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was something. I wrote back, thank you. That was the extent of our communication. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something, but I wasn't holding my breath, and I was okay with that. Ethan started third grade in September, confident and happy. He'd made close friends, kids who appreciated his creativity and kindness. His teacher called me in October for a parent conference, and I expected bad news. That's usually what conferences mean. Instead, she smiled. I just wanted to tell you what a wonderful child you have. Ethan is thoughtful, hardworking, and incredibly talented artistically. He's also very emotionally mature for his age. You're doing an amazing job with him. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. That means a lot. Has he always been this well-adjusted? He's had some challenges, I said carefully. Family stuff. But we work through things together. She nodded knowingly. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. He's thriving. That evening, I told Ethan what his teacher had said. He beamed with pride. Do you think we could invite some of my friends over for my birthday? He asked. Absolutely. Who do you want to invite? He listed off 5 names, kids from school and the neighborhood. No mention of Sophie or Sam. No mention of wanting to see my parents or Kelsey. His birthday party in November was loud, chaotic, and perfect. 8 children running around our house, eating pizza and cake, playing games. I watched Ethan laughing with his friends and realized this was what childhood was supposed to look like. Joy without conditions, love without comparison. Christmas came again. Our second one without my extended family. Ethan and I had established new traditions, decorating the tree together while drinking hot chocolate, watching old movies, volunteering at a local shelter on Christmas Eve. On Christmas morning, Ethan opened his presents with genuine excitement. Art supplies, books, new clothes he actually needed, a tablet for his digital art experiments. Nothing extravagant, but everything chosen with thought and care. This is perfect, Mom, he said, hugging me tight. Thank you. You're welcome, sweetheart. Do you miss them, Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Kelsey? I thought about it honestly. Sometimes I miss the idea of them. The family I wished we could be. But I don't miss how they made us feel. Me neither, he said. I like it better this way. Just us. Just us, I agreed. Later that day, Jessica came over for dinner along with a few colleagues from work who'd become friends. We ate too much, laughed a lot, and nobody compared anyone to anyone else. Nobody made anyone feel less than. It was simply people who cared about each other enjoying time together. As I cleaned up that evening, Ethan already asleep upstairs, I thought about the journey of the past year. The hurt, the anger, the courage it took to set boundaries. The lawsuit, the judgment, the freedom that came with standing firm. I thought about those socks, still tucked away in Ethan's drawer, a reminder of the moment everything changed. My parents and Kelsey struggled with the consequences of their choices. The lawsuit cost them thousands in legal fees they couldn't recover. Their insurance premiums were triple what they'd paid under my plan, eating into savings they'd counted on for retirement. Kelsey and Todd's marriage strained under the financial pressure, leading to constant arguments about money. My mother's reputation in our extended family suffered as the truth about the Christmas presents and the insurance situation spread. People stopped taking her side, stopped enabling her favoritism. Sophie and Sam, now teenagers, began asking uncomfortable questions about why they never saw their cousin anymore, forcing Kelsey to confront her own role in the family fracture. My father, perhaps feeling the weight of years of silence, became increasingly withdrawn. They had gambled that I would always be the reliable one, the one who swallowed hurt for the sake of peace. They lost that gamble, and the price was higher than they'd imagined. As for Ethan and me, we built a life full of people who valued us, who showed up because they wanted to, not because they felt obligated. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who can't see your worth. And looking back at that Christmas morning, at those socks that changed everything, I realized I had no regrets. Standing up for my son, for myself, for the basic dignity we both deserved, that wasn't revenge. That was simply refusing to settle for less than we were worth. And that made all the difference. So, after hearing my story, I have to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to choose between your own peace and holding on to a toxic family dynamic? Tell me what you think. I really want to know your perspective in the comments below.